All right, hello, everybody. Welcome to the planning board meeting of July 26th, 2022. Let's start off by doing a roll call of the planning board members. Just going to call you out as I see you up here. Andrew.
Here.
Linda.
Here.
Haley.
Here.
And Sue.
Here.
Then I know Mark is out on vacation this week. All right. So starting with our 7 o'clock agenda item, we have a ZBA recommendation for, well, it's at 48Y Fitchburg Turnpike, and Quarry North Road LLC is looking for a special permit for that. And I believe Chris Clausen, you're the one representing Quarry North. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
And I think Elizabeth, he's able to share everything he needs to share.
Yes.
All right.
Very good. I'll share my screen and we'll get started already.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you. There we go. Good evening, board. My name is Chris Clausen. I'm with Quarry North Road LLC. And tonight I have with me Matt Leidner, who is our civil engineer, and Bill Henchy, who is our attorney. And so together we're going to make a presentation to the board and hopefully give you a quick overview of what we have proposed, and then open it up to some questions. And in my communication with Elizabeth Hughes, we understand that this meeting will be continued at the end of this session today. I just wanted to start off by saying that we're in front of you today because sometime last year we came before this board for a definitive subdivision for this piece of land, 48Y Fitchburg Turnpike. And it was clear to us from discussions with the board, discussions with Elizabeth, and extensive discussions with town council, that it was your preference for us to come before this, the ZBA and through the planning board for a special permit. And that's why we're here today to present this to you. So having said that, I'm going to give you a quick overview of what we're proposing. I'm going to turn it over to our civil engineer to take you through our civil drawings and the stormwater report. Then I'm going to come back and show you the floor plans and elevations of the homes and take you through some of the landscaping. And then Elizabeth provided me with staff report, and I would like to just comment on a few of the items in that report. So I'm trying to go quick to get through my portion of it. We purchased this property from the town of Sudbury. The property, some of the property is in the town of Sudbury, and 16 acres is in the town of Concord, and that's what we're in front of you today for. The special permit includes 1 duplex and 4 single-family homes on that 16 acres. And we are placing a little bit more than 57% of the overall 16-acre parcel into a permanent common open space restriction. And all of that land, or much of that land, is adjacent to other land that the town of Concord owns today. We've also had discussions with Natural Resources and Mrs. Hughes about protecting the wetland boundary by self-imposing a 25-foot no-touch buffer along the wetland boundary, and we have proposed to do that as part of this application today. And lastly, we have filed a notice of intent with Natural Resources. This property was a former gravel mine, and much of the land that we'll be repurposing with these 6 homes has already been altered. but some of the work that we'll be doing is in the buffer zone, but we're not doing any work within any jurisdictional areas other than the buffer zone. So we have filed a notice of intent with Natural Resources, and I believe that will be heard next month. This is an aerial image of, I wanted to just give you an idea of the locus. This black line here is the town line. Sudbury is on the south side of the town line, and Concord is on the north side of the town line. The parcel 48Y, outlining the property boundary now here. You can see that that's the 48Y parcel, and much of the land has already been excavated through the mining operations that Sudbury did for the past 30 plus years on that piece of land. This parcel here is owned by the town of Concord. This parcel is also owned by the town of Concord. This parcel is owned by Mr. Villers. And this piece and this piece, which abut 48Y, are owned by Mr. and Mrs. Poor. We also have some, there's a little sliver that doesn't show up on this aerial, but the town of Sudbury owns this land over here. So that gives you an idea of the locus. And I wanted to turn it over to our civil engineer now, and Matt Leidner, and he was going to just take you through the existing conditions, give you an overview of the plan, and then talk about the stormwater plan.
Thanks, Chris. Good evening, board members. I hope everyone's doing well this evening. My name is Matt Leidner, civil engineer for Quarry North Road, LLC. And I will give you an overview of the first existing conditions here, and then I'll go into the proposed site plan, give you an overview of that. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that come up along the way or at the end of the presentation. And Chris, if I could ask you to continue controlling the screen, that would be great.
You want me to stay on the existing condition screen?
Yeah, go if you don't mind going back to the existing conditions. So the tract itself, the portion of the tract that is in Concord, which is the subject of this PRD, as you can see from the existing topography, it really kind of tells a story that much of this tract was mined for sand and gravel. You can see the slopes that kind of flank so north is up on this plan, and you can see the slopes, existing slopes that flank the northern and sort of the eastern edge of where the historic gravel mining operation had occurred. And as you'll see on subsequent slides here, the proposed development is substantially, if not entirely, contained within that formerly disturbed area of the gravel mining operation. So the topography is such that there is a slope that kind of slopes down into this site, into the developed part of this, the proposed development or developed part of the site. And it almost at today forms sort of a bowl, if you will, in terms of the topography. So it's kind of been hollowed out from the sand and gravel that was mined in the past from this area. So Chris, if you can advance to the next slide.
Let me just point out one thing. Well, actually, I'll be quiet. Okay, next slide. This is
okay. So this is one of the sheets from the plan set that has been submitted. I wanted to show this just because first in terms of the proposed project, because it provides an overview of the sort of the land use areas that are proposed as to comprise this PRD development. So the bold line there is that outlines the site in its entirety there. So that bold, dark, thick black line there, that is the 16-acre portion of the property that comprises the proposed PRD. Within that 16 acres, there are various components of land use associated with the PRD. So The first I'll mention is approximately 6 acres of the 16 total acres, which are the solid gray hatch, which the cursor's on right now. And you'll see the labels home site A through E. So those 6 acres are what we're calling the exclusive residential area. So those are the home sites for the 6 single-family homes, 2 of which comprise a duplex building, and then 4 detached single-family homes, as you'll see on the next slide. So a total of 5 home sites, A through E. The duplex site, which is site A, is approximately 2 acres, and then B, C, D, E, which are the detached single-family home sites, are each approximately 1 acre, which makes up the 6 acres of home sites. Also, the PRD includes just under an acre. It's about 8/10 of an acre of common residential use area. So that is essentially that's the access drive, the access roadway, and the shoulders along the side of the access roadway. The remaining, so the balance of the land, which is 9.2 acres, is what's being outlined there. So that is what is proposed to be the common open space area, which Chris had mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. So the next slide, when we go to it, we'll zoom in. If you see the sort of, there's a dash, Chris, if you can go back.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. Yep. So there's sort of a dash boxed outline area. So, you know, since much of the PRD tract is this open space, I want to just zoom in, and the plans do zoom in on what is proposed to be developed, the portion of this tract that is proposed to be developed. So if you can go to that next slide, Chris, please. So this is essentially just a colored up version of the site plan that's been submitted. You can see the 6 homes here. So on the left side, or the west side, is the duplex. So that's 2 single-family homes attached. And then to the right of that, or the east of that, are the 4 detached single-family homes. All 6 of them front on Rookery Lane, which is a proposed private roadway or private driveway to serve these 6 homes. The homes themselves will each have individual driveways off of Rookery Lane, similar to any type of residential single-family type development. The road network, or not network, but Rookery Lane will tie into and be accessed from the road network that is approved and under construction currently in Sudbury. I know this plan unfortunately doesn't show the road itself. If you were to go back to the previous plan, it does show that, but essentially it just connects to the approved network in Sudbury and creates a loop. The homes themselves, in terms of the services and utilities that will serve them, are proposed to be all electric homes to be served by public water, and each home will be served by an individual septic system. The plan set, which was submitted, included a grading and stormwater management plan. And the project does utilize low impact development techniques to reduce its impact on the site. So most notably, and as has been mentioned already, we're containing the development here to what has historically and previously been disturbed as or in conjunction with the previous gravel mining operation that existed on this site. So that's really most notable, but beyond that, we've also implemented and taken steps to minimize impervious surfaces. So we've gone with a relatively narrow roadway, still acceptable to emergency services, but we've minimized the width of the roadway itself, Rookery Lane, to 20 feet. We've justified the homes toward the roadway itself, as opposed to setting them way back, which reduces the impervious surface associated with the driveways as well. We're proposing substantial infiltration in terms of stormwater management on this site. So What you don't see here, and so our goal was to try to blend it in and sort of make it invisible to the development, but provide substantial infiltration. So what you don't see here is on the east side, which is the low side of the site, we're proposing a subsurface infiltration system, and that will take the runoff from the roadway itself, Rookery Lane, and the front half of each of the lots, which flows down the page toward Rookery Lane. So the water will run off and be pre-treated in water quality units, and then infiltrated and undergo final treatment in a substantial infiltration system under the roadway in that area. The rear portions of the lots will flow up the page northward based on topography to a bioretention area in the northern portion of the proposed developed area. So that area right there. And we've tried to sort of blend that in and make it sort of look in harmony with everything in terms of the not only the topography, but the planting plan for that bioretention area. So the plan is to include a conservation and wildlife seed mix throughout the bioretention area. It's a water tolerant seed mix, so that bioretention area will obviously see water at times and then infiltrate that water and be dry at times as well. So the seed mix is appropriate for that balance of wet and dry. And then also beyond just the seed mix throughout that bioretention area, we're also proposing a significant number of individual plantings, which you can see on there. And we've submitted a landscape plan detailing what those specific plantings are. And those plantings are also, in addition to the seed mix, are wildlife friendly plantings, very specifically chosen for this basin and this location. So the infiltration systems, the subsurface in the roadway, and then this bioretention area, not only mitigate the peak rate of runoff, which is the state standard for mitigating runoff, but they also mitigate the volume of runoff. So the volume of runoff from this proposed developed area will not exceed the existing volume of runoff from this area, which is a much more stringent standard to meet, and this development does meet that standard. So the treatment train and sort of upstream of these infiltration basins are the last components of the stormwater treatment system. Upstream of them, before the water gets to them, are water quality units associated with the subsurface system, and then a vegetated filter strip associated with the bioretention area. So all in all, the stormwater treatment or the stormwater management not only mitigates rate and volume, which is a very high standard to meet, but also undergoes a very high level of water quality treatment. And these infiltration areas, both the subsurface under the road and then this bioretention area, have been designed to manage and treat and mitigate up to and including the 100-year storm without any discharge from them. So they're substantial in their capacity to treat and manage the stormwater. And as part of our submission package to the board, we included, in addition to the plan set, which had a grading and drainage plan in it, we included a comprehensive stormwater report with all the backup calculations and narrative to discuss all the stormwater management measures that are being proposed on this site.
Hey, Matt, one thing that might be important for the board to understand is the topography here. All of there's nothing that drains, or the way the grading works, it all slopes down into this bioretention. It doesn't go over over the top of the hill, right?
Yes, thank you, Chris. So as I mentioned earlier, with that existing conditions plan, the site is effectively a bowl right now based on the former gravel mining. So it's a pit, essentially. And so what we've done is the limit of work there, which is the kind of the limit of the color on this site plan, is the limit of the former gravel operation. And so while we have smoothed the slopes out and we will be restoring them with loaming and seeding and various seed mixtures depending on the part of the site, and it's all detailed on the landscape plan. Right, to Chris's point, it flows inward into this site and into that bioretention area to undergo the treatment.
I think that's important because, all of this land here, it will be in a conservation restriction. And there's a rookery, a blue heron rookery back in here. We were very conscious of that when we were designing this.
So, with that, I guess, Chris, I'll turn it back over to you to begin the next part of the presentation.
Okay, so I was going to go in, if the board wishes, I was going to just go through the homes that are proposed and the floor plans. Chair, that's acceptable?
Yeah, that would be great. Please continue.
All right, very good. So we haven't named these houses yet. I call the duplex an M plan. So we have one of those. It's each side has a 2-car garage and they're 4 bedrooms. The front elevation, one side has a side loading garage and the other side has a front loading garage. And then on the single family side, we included with this application, we submitted 4 different floor plans for 4 different homes to give the public a choice on what might fit. When Matt did his layout on his civil plans, he made sure that all these home options could fit within the footprint allocated for each one of these home locations. All the homes are designed with the smart growth in mind. They're all electric. It was Elizabeth was clear to us that we should stay away from natural gas, and actually we've opened. We're going to hopefully bring Concord Municipal Light and Power into this property to power these homes. All the homes will be solar ready. We're going to wire them for EV charging stations. All the appliances will be Energy Star, and we're incorporating energy efficient building designs into each one of these homes with insulation, high efficiency HVAC systems, and low or no VOC materials. So the first plan is the duplex. It's not a colored plan. This is the M plan. This side has a side loading garage. This is the front loading garage. Sorry, it's not colored. We have some gables for the front architecture. Both front doors are right in the front. It's a 2-story design, and there'll be a basement that goes underneath each side. Zoom in here to give you a better picture of this. So this is the first floor of the duplex, the 2-car garage. It's basically the first floor is all living space where you have your kitchen opening up into a everything room or gathering room. A little nook here for your breakfast table. This is flex space, which most people will probably, they might want a front room or a dining room or turn it into an office. If they don't, this would be their little office here. The second, going upstairs here to the second floor. That's where all the bedrooms are located. Owner's suite is en suite with its own bathroom. We have the laundry upstairs because all the bedrooms are up here. The 3 bedrooms 2, 3, and 4 share this bath here. So that's the floor plan for the duplexes. This plan, which you call the C plan, I have two elevations. This is elevation 1. This is a colonial. All the rest of the plans are colonial styles. It's the alternate elevation. They both have clapboard siding. This has a combination of hip and gable roof lines on it, and as well as this alternate elevation. Side loading garages. Zooming in on the floor plans. Again, all the single family homes will have a basement and two floors above it. They're all consistent, and all the bedrooms are on the second floor. So this plan, our C plan, when you come in the entry foyer, the formal living room is on your right-hand side. Dining room is easy access off the kitchen. This is the everything room, or the family room, and we have an office or library here off of that. We incorporated a deck into this plan. On the second floor, that's where all the bedrooms are. The owner's suite takes up a good portion, maybe about half of the second floor. We have a Jack and Jill set up with the bathroom here for bedrooms 3 and 4, and bedroom 2 is en suite. We do offer, we want to offer some options. We have a chef's kitchen, but since what we call the chef's kitchen, it was when we were going to put gas in the kitchen, and so this option will go away. There's no gas, but we do offer the option to turn this room into a sunroom or a 3-season room. And then on the owner's suite, we have some options on how to finish off the baths with the standalone tubs, or more shower heads in the shower, those types of things. H plan has two elevations as well. This is all hips, roof lines with clapboard sidings. Again, this is all hip, and we have introduced some cedar shake with some clapboard and some stone. So those are the two elevation styles for the H plan. I can go faster through this because these plans are very similar. Again, all the bedrooms are on the second floor. This plan has one difference where above the gathering room, it's clear 2 stories. So there's a volume ceiling here over this floor plan. But otherwise, the kitchen is off the back again. We have a deck. We have the formal living room, library or an office here, and a dining room. So upstairs is the owner's suite is over here. And then Jack and Jill bathroom here for bedrooms 3 and 4, and bedroom 2 is en suite. Similar options as the C plan. K plan, we have one elevation with the K plan. Again, these are all colonial style homes. And zooming in, the second floor again has all the bedrooms up on the second floor. A little bit different layout here for the first floor. Still have the living room and dining room off of the foyer, but the kitchen and gathering room are oriented slightly different. And the last plan is our W plan. Again, it's another traditional colonial look. Zooming in on it. Bedrooms are all on the second floor. Owner's suite takes up about half of the second floor. Living room and dining room are off the foyer. The space where you do most of your living is right here, where it's all the kitchen and the gathering room are side by side. That's a quick overview of the floor plans. I was going to go into a quick landscape review, if that's okay. We hired Bowler to do the landscape design for us, and they provided a plan for the single family homes and the duplexes, and then they gave us an overall plan for the rest of the property. This is the overall plan for the rest of the property, and this table here highlights the plant palette. I can go through that if it's of interest to the board. I can tell you that we were conscious of the plant palette that was selected, and we tried to focus on plant material that could serve multiple purposes, and we felt that having some plants that could bear berries and fruits for wildlife would be important. The seed mix that we have proposed for other areas is also to help with pollinators, and so that we were conscious of that with the landscape plan. And this is the basic landscape plan for the single family home and for the duplex. It includes some deciduous trees, evergreens, and some shade trees and some ground cover. Very, very straightforward. So that's the end of kind of the overview. I just wanted to just share with you a couple of comments on the town planner's report that we received. There was a couple of items that were highlighted that I wanted just to bring to your attention. We understand that the diversity of dwelling units needs to be addressed, and we're going to address that with staff. Do know that one of the checklists is the differences and having a difference in price points. And I can tell you that this duplex will be priced probably $500,000 to $700,000 less expensive than a single family home. We haven't got that far in determining what the value or what we can sell these things for. As you can appreciate, the whole world of construction is kind of changes by the minute nowadays. But we do know that the duplexes will be significantly less expensive. We will follow up with planning on addressing that. There's a the town engineer provided some feedback to us and asked us to make a number of changes on the stormwater report, the drainage system, and we've already made all of those changes and incorporated that into a revised plan set that has been transmitted back to engineering and planning. They haven't had time to review it yet, but by the time we get together next go around, hopefully that'll be confirmed that we've addressed the town engineer's questions. We did, Elizabeth pointed out that on the civil plans, we still had a gas service line in the plan set, and that will be removed because we are not going to offer natural gas. Natural Resources has pointed out that they'd like to see some different type of vegetation that we've proposed in our landscape plan, and I will commit that I'll work with Natural Resources over the next few weeks, and we'll come up with a plant palette that hopefully meets everyone's needs. Let's see. There was a question the town engineer brought up about traffic, on how much traffic will go east towards Concord. And I followed up with Justin Richardson and provided him with a table from the TIAS that indicates 55% of the traffic leaving will go east towards Concord. And these 6 houses generate over a 24-hour period 58 trips. So it's not a lot of volume, but 55% of that volume will go east. So there was a question as to the lighting on the homes, and I have a question for the board. We haven't provided any cut sheets on the types of lights that go on the homes, and we would like direction from you. Do you want, should these fixtures be dark sky compliant, or if they are, then we can give you cut sheets on that. That would be fine. Yeah.
So if I can jump in, because the question, that comments generated from me, understanding that each of these homes, has different options as far as exteriors, and people may want different fixtures, and should the board move forward in recommending approval, I feel confident that I could probably draft a condition to allow some flexibility in the selection of dark sky compliant exterior fixtures prior to the issuance of building permits. So that's just an option that I put out for the board to consider should they move forward with recommending approval.
That would be that helpful to us if the board chooses to do that. That would be very helpful. So that kind of concludes my discussion. If you have questions, if the board has questions, otherwise, I guess we can respond to staff comments and after they've had time to review our responses, and we'll see you in another month.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. I know I have a couple of questions, and I'm sure some of the other board members will as well. So I want to kind of start with, so the grading, you mentioned it's sort of like a bowl, and it looks like what exactly is sort of the average height of the grade back there?
Matt, can you take that one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to dodge the question, but it's so variable, and such a wide range of grades back there. I don't think I could really assign an average grade. That both the existing and the proposed significantly varies.
But maybe more specifically behind or nearest to the duplex set, because those two seem the closest to existing grade.
Right. So in the vicinity of the duplex units, the top of foundation of those two units, they vary a foot from one another. They're stepped 1 foot vertically, but they're on average, their top of foundations elevation 160. I'm looking at my other screen right now. Forgive me for not looking at
Yeah, it's okay. Understood.
So the existing 160 contour actually goes right through that home. Within that home footprint, the existing topography varies from, in the 150s to probably almost 170. So, we're right in that range with the proposed footprint of that home. As you move farther to the east or to the right on the page, we do end up more in a fill. So I would say the duplex is probably the closest to existing grade of any of the homes. As you move toward the right, down toward the east on the project, the existing depression or cut becomes more significant. And in order to harmonize with the land itself, but also with the adjacent development in Sudbury and the perimeter grading of the former gravel pit, we do fill more and more, as we go to the east. So the homes toward the east are in more of a fill condition than that duplex home on the west end.
So I guess maybe, are you able to go back to one of the earlier slides that actually showed the topography on there? The black and white one, I think it was the one, right? Yep. Yeah. Yeah, because like kind of where you had the mouse hovering just there.
Right.
It seems like basically to the sort of northeast, northwest of where the duplexes are, that's quite a steep incline. Is that correct?
It's a.
Yeah, it's correct. Not just to the northwest of that duplex, but really that northern edge of that slope there, which slopes northward toward the wetland, which is beyond that, which is where it flattens out. That whole outer slope is steep, and we've intentionally stayed off of that slope because of.
And there's no work that needs to be done in terms of like any sort of retaining wall or anything like that to secure that. Because it's,
No,
again, it just seems very close to where the duplex is.
No, you're correct. So there's no retaining wall, the grades in that. So the grade in that area, as I mentioned, that duplex is the closest of any of the buildings to existing grade. And it's for that very reason, because we want to more or less match the existing grade in that area. We don't want any significant cut or filling in that area because of the slopes. As you move to the east, it's hard to pick up on this plan, at this scale, but that steep slope as it wraps, the northern edge and then wraps sort of down the page to the east. The northern half of that is sloping toward the wetlands, but the southern half is actually sloping into the site to the south. There's a ridge, that's all a ridge line. So, and we're contained within that ridge line.
Yep.
So it's really just that western end that you're talking about. That's not as much of a ridge as just a slope out toward the wetland. And that's where we've matched, more or less the existing grade to prevent any type of significant grading and certainly no retaining wall up in that area. So, we're pretty well married to the existing grade on that western end for that very reason. That's a great question.
Great, thank you. And really quickly, just the other two questions. For the EV charging, the plan is to have 240 outlets in the garages for each of the existing spaces, or one?
I don't know the answer to that. I know we're putting, so I don't know the answer to that. I'll have to talk to the architect. So I think from a market standpoint, if people want an EV charging station for each stall, we're going to put it in for them.
Okay. And then the only other question I had is for the driveways. It looks like currently all of the houses are oriented so that the garages face basically to the west. And Elizabeth, this might be more of a question for you. What are the rules around having a shared driveway? Say if the four single family homes, the garages faced each other and they shared a common driveway to reduce the amount of impervious surface.
So because this is a PRD special permit, there's no additional permitting that's required for a shared driveway. If it's part of the project, it's something that the board can review and approve.
And I mean, I'm saying that, Chris or Matthew, I mean, what are your what's your response?
I mean, I can tell you the reason why we cannot do that. And it's because of the topography. So from a two-dimensional standpoint, a layout standpoint, it's a great thought. However, when you add the third dimension in, the grading, this road really it drops from west to east. And so the homes themselves are stepping down, with the duplexes being the highest of all six. They step down every single home steps down vertically as you go eastward. So we very intentionally have the driveways separate from one another, and also all on the west side, which is the high side of the units. The reason we do that is because the elevations of the homes themselves, so that the top of foundation elevation, we set that based on the road grade along that particular lot's frontage. We don't want a home depressed or lower than the road grade. That's really kind of a no-no from an engineering standpoint. Mm-hmm. It's not desirable. We want the home to be at or slightly above the road grade. So in this case, It's really the road grade at the high end, the left end of each lot is what sets the house grade, the top of foundation. Having the driveway on the uphill side allows us to have a very gently sloped driveway coming into that unit. If we were to either combine and share driveways for adjacent units, or even just mirror some of the buildings to have separate driveways, but facing each other on the same, opposing sides of the building, the grade difference. So the driveways have to be held high because the garage is the garage elevation is a function of the first floor elevation. So the garages are high. So we'd have that elevation difference have to be between adjacent units, and driveways have to be made up in a much shorter distance than if we keep the driveways on the high side. So the driveways would be much steeper if they were on the low side of the road. And then that grade differential would be much greater. So we'd have these sort of the much steeper slopes between driveways and units if we were to do that. So it's a great question. It's a great thought. And Elizabeth had brought that up as well. And, on a flatter site, I think it would be something we would definitely want to consider and might be worth doing. But on this site with the grading, it just really from a grading standpoint and, a final product, what the final design and what it will look like out there in the field, it will look much better with the driveways on the high side, because that grade can be eased much better between the adjacent lots. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Great.
Is there anyone else on the board that has any questions?
I do.
Yeah, go ahead, Linda.
Oh, gosh, Linda.
Yeah. Oh, is that? I just wondered, with your transition from a subdivision to a PRD, what changes did you make, and sort of what are the elements of a PRD that are reflected in this design?
Well, I think there's a number of them. First of all, the housing types, from a subdivision standpoint, we would have done 6 single-family homes rather than a duplex and 4 single-family homes. So that's one major change. The amount of open space that we are committing to put into conservation restriction, that's another large change. I think the roadway that Matt, this is more your area, but I think you made some changes on this road design versus the definitive subdivision.
Yeah, so we were able to meander the road a little bit more and not have it be as straight as it was on the subdivision. So you can see there's a little more curvature to the road here. The road width itself also, we were able to go a little bit narrower. Again, it's wide enough for emergency vehicles and service delivery vehicles and such. But it's slightly narrower, 2 feet, I believe. Your subdivision regs, I believe, require 22 feet, and we're at 20 feet. So we were able to go a little bit narrower as well with this roadway as compared with the definitive plan.
I'd say those are the major changes.
And why did you decide not to have any affordable housing in this project?
Well, maybe I can show. So this is kind of extends into the Sudbury portion here. So these single-family homes in a duplex are adjacent to this larger residential project that we're doing. And the product mixes that are within this area here have a lot of variables. So down here at the front, there's some affordable housing apartment units, and there's some market rate apartment units. This building here is an age-restricted a low-rise building with flats on it. These townhouses over here are age-restricted townhomes, And then these townhomes here don't have an age restriction on them. They're just regular townhomes. So we have the affordable already in the overall design. These homes are kind of complementary. It's like the next layer of housing types. That's why we didn't. So.
Well, it would seem to me then that you've put all your affordable housing in Sudbury and none in Concord.
That is true. That is true.
Okay. In terms of the town services calculations that you made in your submission, could you tell me where you got your data from?
So I think I footnoted.
Particularly with regard to the assumption that there'll only be 3 children going to Concord schools?
I think I pulled that out of another fiscal impact a study that was done in Concord. I can't recall the actual study at this point, but I can track it down for you and get that for you.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
And in terms of the solar readiness of the properties, you have 4 different models, and I was wondering, given the siting, would each of the 4 models in each of the, I don't know, 4 or 5 locations as you have, are they all suitable for solar to be installed?
It's our understanding.
In terms of being efficient?
It's our understanding that yes, they are. One avenue we did explore some time ago was to use this property for a solar field, and we had a layout for that, and it worked well. So these home sites will benefit from just like the solar field will.
And could there be additional solar locations not on the roofs? I mean, could people put solar in the backyards or whatever?
I don't think there's a prohibition to that, so that would be up to the homeowner if they wanted to do that. That seems to be the direction everyone's going. So I wouldn't be surprised if somebody did that. So.
Okay. And in terms of the common open space area that you show in the plan, do you have any amenities, trails? I mean, there's a river view nearby. I mean, is there any opportunity for either the residents or also the residents, who are abutting this from Sudbury to take advantage of that space?
We have not put that into any of our designs. I think when we do the CR, that might be something Natural Resources will discuss with us. There's I think I mentioned earlier, there's a blue heron rookery down in this area, and I'm not sure, and I know Concord has trails that go back in this area that lead back to White Pond. But I'm not sure how close those trails can go to the wetlands, and this would be a discussion I have to have with Natural Resources if they want to prohibit that from ever taking place, or they want to encourage people to visit there.
Okay.
Linda, I can also add, I did have that conversation with the Natural Resources Director, specifically just for this project. And given the steep slope that basically encircles these 6 units because of the quarry operation, a trail network within there is basically almost infeasible, given those slopes.
That's a good point, Elizabeth.
Okay.
Yeah,
I've
it's
I've
it's
never
pretty-
walked. I've
it's
never
pretty
walked. down
steep.
them. I've never walked down them.
Well, if there's nothing on them, maybe do a little backcountry skiing down out
Right.
there. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I can
I had
jump.
a question about utility services. So there was a comment about.
1 second, Andrew. Haley was ahead of you
Oh,
there.
sorry.
Sorry, Andrew. Just maybe I missed this, but just for the avoidance of doubt, the wetlands lines, this is based on like a final delineation on the site.
We had LEC. I don't know if you know Richard Kirby from LEC. So we had them go out and delineate the lines. We did not bring that delineation to Natural Resources to confirm it, but we are well outside of those the lines that LEC delineated.
Okay, yeah, they've been flagged. They've been flagged
They've been
though.
all
Okay.
flagged, right.
I mean, if you zoom in right where we're looking, there's like that faint line around kind of the perimeter, if you will. Yeah, so is that the 100-foot buffer or what is that?
That's the 100. That's the buffer zone line. Yeah.
Okay. So again, just confirming what I saw in the plans, it looked like there will be work inside that for the duplex, as far as I could tell, but that's covered by Natural Resources. Elizabeth?
Yeah, so the applicant has filed for the notice of intent. It is on the agenda, I believe it's August 19th.
14th or 19th, somewhere.
Or,
in
yeah, it's Wednesday.
there. Right.
It is on for August. No, how about the 17th?
I sent the butter notices out, so I just remember. I thought it was.
I'll have to look that up, Haley, but so part of that first meeting and prior to that meeting, the actual wetland delineation will need to be approved by Natural Resources. And it's my recommendation that the board, finish its questions, its discussions tonight and continue this out to the August 23rd meeting, which will allow engineering and all of the other information that Mr. Clausen talked about being submitted, to have that submitted and reviewed by staff and a revised report. And if the board has any indication on which direction they'd like to move, that can take place. So before the August 23rd meeting, that delineation will be reviewed by Natural Resources. A couple of flags may move, here and
Oh,
there,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
I don't, after discussing it with Delia, I don't see there being any significant changes in that actual wetland line and the buffer.
Cool. Yeah, I just wasn't sure. I was just looking at it on our own GIS and it looked about the same. And so I was like, it's very rare that the actual wetlands end up being what was mapped originally.
Yeah, I think that is because of the previous quarry operation and how steep that slope is.
Yeah.
It really doesn't have anywhere to go.
Got it. And then, so as far as like the 25-foot thing that was described or mentioned right in the very beginning of the presentation, I think, can you describe that more? Or I mean, and we can kick that too if that falls under NRC. But Chris, you said something about like a 25-foot protection.
Yeah, that's the town's wetland bylaw. Under the town's wetland bylaw, there is a 20-foot no disturb. So. Yeah. No disturb, no grading, no impact, no whatsoever. Then there's a 50-foot no build. So no structures, no man-made type improvements. And then there's the 100-foot buffer.
Sure.
Where the commission does allow some impacts or development within the buffer if it's offset or mitigated elsewhere in a project.
Okay. So Chris, what was the 25-foot thing on the?
Well, I think what we're talking about is putting it into our association documents and making sure that all the homeowners know they stay out of that area. You know, Bill Henchy, maybe you can describe that better than I can.
Sure. Good evening, members of the board. Bill Henchy from Orleans. I represent Quarry North Road. Yeah, in order to make sure, and this was a discussion we had in some staff meetings earlier, in order to be sure that the 25-foot, basically, well, the 20-foot no disturb area remains that way, and that the landowners know not to go in there. This development will be a condominium, and the condominium documents will require that 25-foot, not the 20-foot, but 25 feet from the edge of the wetlands remain undisturbed, untouched, uncut, untrammeled, et cetera, et cetera. And this was something that Natural Resources had requested, and we readily agreed to that.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, it's a formality, right? But just, okay, I understand. Yeah, so I guess kind of similar to Linda's reaction perhaps, and we get the benefit of looking at what's happening in Sudbury here right next door. You know, I can't help but feel, I guess, somewhat disappointed that we have 4 units that look like, you know, what would be happening under a regular subdivision, rather than, you know, more duplexes. So maybe along the same lines, I mean, I guess I'm just wondering why not more, why not another duplex?
I don't know how to answer that. I guess we've explored lots of different uses for this land. I mentioned earlier, we looked at a solar field. We looked athletic fields. We looked at, I'm trying to remember some of the other things we looked at. And our preference was really the definitive plan where we would have done 6 homes. From our perspective, we're trying to give the town what they had asked for, of having some type of a diverse product mix. And from an economic standpoint, it's 2 out of 6 may work better for us than more than 2 out of 6 for duplex.
Well, Chris, if I might, Mr. Chair, through you, in addition, the definitive subdivision would have been some very large lots. And this proposal results in most of the site being dedicated to open space, particularly where it's adjacent to the zone 1 of the White Pond wells. So our thought was that this would be a significant benefit to the town, at least in those respects.
Right.
And Haley, just as a side note, I understand the comments and the reaction that both you and Linda had with the project. And additionally, the reality of this is that the town of Concord was not invited to the table for the project in Sudbury. For whatever reason, and that's water under the bridge. But as part of that whole project in Sudbury with the applicant, the town of Sudbury owned all of this land and owned the land in Concord as well. And part of that agreement that they did with the applicant is only 6 units are allowed to be built on this property. So as the board understands the complexity of PRDs and the financial feasibility of projects, especially with the way construction is right now, number of units does make a difference, and the board is, that's part of the conversation the board's been having with combined business residents. So 6 units does not provide a lot of flexibility in either affordability or, I'm going to say more creative options.
I see. So you're saying under the historic nature of this parcel, even if under a PRD, they could do more than 6.
No,
They can't.
they cannot do more than 6 units.
I see.
Regardless, if the town of Concord said, we think this is the most fantastic place and would love 100 units of affordable dwellings, and you can do whatever you want, there can only be 6 units on this property.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's as far as that conversation has to go, Mr. Henchy.
Sudbury totally screwed us, huh? Just kidding. Okay, and just again on the topography, and so I'm understanding and seeing things correctly, and I think maybe on the next whatever the yeah, there you go. As far as like where said common open space would start, if I'm reading this right, it's pretty steep, right? So
Right.
you're not, if there was ever any public access, it's not going to happen, I think is the conclusion. And then would there be a restriction on the single family homes and fences? Because I guess in looking at this, if I'm in the duplex and in theory, there's some common open space over there, but if everybody between me and the open space puts up fences as far as the property lines go, I'm not going to be able to get to it anyways.
Yeah, I think when Matt Leidner was describing this limit of work here, on the north of this, which is this direction, I mean, it really drops off steep. I mean, really, really steep, and most of this common open space is in this area here. And there is some up in here too. So I think accessing that for any of these homeowners, as Elizabeth pointed out earlier, I've never hiked down that slope, and I've walked that property 100 times. I've never hiked down that slope. It's steep.
Sure.
So Haley, understanding that concern, I can think about that and have a conversation with the applicant and Delia as well, because there will be a limit. They won't be allowed to put fences beyond the buffer or into the buffer anyways. But maybe establishing as part of the homeowner documents, you know, a limit of, you know, a limit of disturbance, or not necessarily the exclusive use areas for each of these lots is the lots, but maybe having, you know, a defined area, you know, that limits that type of, you know, construction of fences, or so that's something that we I can discuss the next month. But
Okay.
to Haley's point, as you go through with the NRC, if there is any type of maybe 4-foot, you know, privacy fence, you will definitely want to have that conversation with the NRC for the duplexes.
Okay.
Because, you know, the back of the duplexes are already within the buffer zone.
Right.
So if that's something you want to do, you should include that now.
Okay. Okay, we'll do.
Well, yeah, so I mean, now that I understand what we're up against, I like my last comment would just be, your question, I suppose, is you know, we are severely trying to do anything we can in town, I think, to prevent the absurdity in rising home prices here, which has gotten ridiculous, as I'm sure you guys know. I guess 3-car garages, when I think I saw in the notes that it was expected that each family would have 2 cars. Like, why the 3-car? I'm just curious.
Well, that's a good question, and
1 child, 2 cars.
right.
They're monstrous houses.
So I think if it's just a husband and wife or two people living there, 2 cars is fine. I mean, this is a more of a remote area, so people will need cars. There's no public transportation really that comes to this part of town. The West Concord train station, the Lincoln train stop are just down the road, but you got to get there. And there's no form of public transportation. So I expect these homeowners to have vehicles. As soon as they have kids, they're going to get more cars. But if it's just 2 people living in there, and these are larger homes, as you pointed out, they're still going to have other kinds of things that they need to store in their garage. Snow blowers, lawn. They'll need a riding lawnmower, I'm sure, for cutting the grass. Tools, work benches, and things like that. So that's the reason for the 3-car garages.
Okay, go ahead, Andrew.
Sorry about that. I'm on Linda's wavelength. I am really curious how 6 houses, each with 4 bedrooms, and somehow came up with only 3 children going to school. Just the math. I'm really curious where that came from.
I'm gonna look that up. I'm gonna look that up.
I'm sure you did find it somewhere. I'm just curious where that did come
Okay,
from.
I'll find it.
I had a question. It's a little more nuts and bolts. The provision of municipal services, the electric and the water. So I understand that the thought is that Concord would somehow provide electric, whether by easements through Acton, or not through Acton, sorry, through Sudbury under the existing neighboring development, or how that was going to work. And no one really knows how that's going to work, but that's one question. The other question I had, so that's something that obviously needs to be sorted out. The Concord Light and Power, Concord Powers obviously mentioned that that's a question that's outstanding. The other question I had was the provision of water service.
Okay.
So why is it not on Concord's if it's in Concord is the first question.
So I can answer that, because there is no town water to the site. I mean, there's no town water, there's no power to the site. The town water and sewer division, as an enterprise fund, has the ability to enter into memorandums of understanding with adjacent communities to allow them to provide water to these fringe, I'm going to call them fringe developments, fringe dwellings. There's a couple at the Lincoln town line, and they have that ability. So it's instead of water and sewer division trying to figure out how to run public water down 117 to get to this site, they do not have an issue of any legally, they don't have any issue with being able to enter into that type of memorandum of understanding. So it's just easy. Just off of this page to the bottom right, that's the Sudbury Water District.
Yeah, down here.
So it makes sense. The providing power, that is a much larger can of worms and significant issue when you talk about a municipal light plant, a municipal power company, and adjacent community, which is in this case National Grid. That type of MOU or ability to provide power across town boundaries where there's a municipal light plant, that does not exist. So
yeah, that was kind of the follow-on to my question about Sudbury Water District's authority to provide service in Concord, because I know that Lincoln, you mentioned as an I dealt with the Acton Water District part of the NAGOG 2A kerfuffle. So
Right.
I'm just really curious how the water districts where they don't necessarily have authority to provide service in other towns, is an intermunicipal agreement necessary, or does it take an act of the legislature?
No, this is just a regular memorandum of understanding between
So
the
a
applicant,
water
Sudbury.
district can actually expand into a different town?
Well, I can add a little bit to that for you. The Sudbury Water District had at their district annual meeting had a vote to expand their service area to include these 6 homes. So they did go through to meet their bylaws. They did already have that meeting, and it was voted in at their district annual meeting.
Okay, so they can actually expand to different towns. I didn't know
Yes.
that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, because it is, it's not the town of Sudbury, it is the Sudbury Water District, so.
Right.
So usually these things are painted into little boxes. That's why I was just curious, because
Yeah, so providing water across town boundaries is not a significant hurdle or issue to address. When you get into power and the regulatory issues with power, especially the Department of Public Utilities, for power, that is not going to happen.
And we've had on-site meetings with CMLP, and there's a couple avenues that we are working with them and the Sudbury Public Works and their town engineer as well to extend the CMLP lines to the site. And the mechanics, all the pieces are there. We just have to have some follow-up meetings with CMLP and the town of Sudbury, which I expect to work out in the next couple weeks.
All right, we're nearing, we're getting close to an hour and a half, and I want to make sure we leave some room for public question and comments. I didn't know if there was any other.
Oops.
I have,
Sue, sorry.
I have-
Yes, Sue,
no.
please.
Okay. So like Linda and Haley, I'm unsure how the town of Sudbury gets to prevent us from making it possible to have affordable housing on the site, but I also understand that ship has sailed. So leaving that aside, following on Andrew's question, when it comes to electric utilities, I'm new on the board, so I'm not entirely sure how this works. I wonder if they will be undergrounded, but I'm sure that's part of the can of worms that is being addressed.
To answer your question, Sue, they
Yeah.
will be underground. There is a town bylaw for undergrounding of new utilities.
Yes.
Great, I'm delighted to hear it. Now, the site is to have common open space, but I'm unclear on what the word common means. Usually it means that people can access something in common, but if the common open space is on exclusive use, residential use areas for individual homes, it doesn't seem common, or if people aren't allowed to access them around the back of the site, it doesn't seem common either. Elizabeth, I understand that you'll be checking in with the NRC about that.
Well, so common open space does not mean public.
Oh, by common, I meant common to the private owners on the
Correct.
site,
So,
the 6
if-
houses.
Chris, if you can scroll back one.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So the dark gray area is the exclusive use areas for each of the home sites. The checked area that wraps around it, that will be all of the common open space for the project that will be under a conservation restriction.
Right, so it doesn't look like the duplex people have any ability to walk along the back of the site unless the homeowner of site B grants them some sort of easement to walk over at the back of their yard.
Okay, so this is where at this scale, and this is where that 25-foot no disturbed comes in. The common open space, well, there will actually be a 25-foot, that 25 no disturb is what was requested be included in the common open space. So that the exclusive area does not run exactly up to the edge of the wetland. That 25-foot buffer will actually wrap around that piece of town-owned land.
Okay, so in essence, the 25-foot buffer will become checked.
Yes.
Yes, wonderful.
There's just no way you could ever see it on that plan.
Sure, excellent. Now, on the point of shared driveways, I understand about the 4 detached single-family dwellings. I wonder if the duplexes could have a shared driveway in order to reduce pervious pavement. I understand that they're elevated differently by 1 foot, but that doesn't seem to make that's a minor enough difference that I wonder if it would be possible for them to share driveways.
Well, the garages are on the outside of the duplex, so there's.
It would require reorienting the garage on one of them.
So with your question, whether a different floor plan with the garages back to back on the interior?
That is in essence my question, yes.
Okay, so that is something that I can explore with the applicant and the engineer.
Great. Under in the planner's report under item 10.2.3.3 unit size, it says blah 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 blah. The 4 detached single family floor plans are 4-bedroom homes, each with basement and a 2-car attached garage. I don't know if, and then below that it gives specific plans, and they're all listed as 3 cars. So that might be a typographical error in the report at some level, but I did notice that.
Which section is that?
That was 10.2.3.3. Second paragraph, the paragraph that begins the 2-family building M plan will consist of. It's the second sentence says 2-car attached garage, referring to the detached single family floor plans. 2.3.3.
So the
Oh, yeah.
2-family building will consist of 2 4-bedroom homes.
Right, but go to the
With a
second
basement and a
sentence.
2-car garage.
Go to the second sentence.
Oh,
the
okay,
detached-
and a 3-car. Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, all right, and let's see. On the fixtures, thank you for looking into that, Elizabeth. I would personally like to see them be not only dark sky compliant, but also with a low color temperature, which is better for the surrounding wildlife. And as a final point, I appreciate the homes are solar ready. Looking at the advanced floor plans, they have a lot of hipped roofs and multiple roof segments, which make it seem rather difficult to arrange solar panels on the roofs to get, you know, someday somebody will invent angled solar panels, but at the moment it seems like there'll be very much broken up so that one can hardly have any panels. And I would like to suggest that if one is to get useful solar out of the roofs, it would be better to alter the shapes and alignments somewhat. And I believe, yes, that those were all of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
One more
Thank you.
question.
Is that
May
Linda?
I?
Is that you?
Yes, it's me.
Yes,
of
please go
course.
ahead.
And this just has to do with it. I believe I saw somewhere that you're looking for a waiver with regard to height. Could we explore that a bit? Because I must say that I didn't completely understand it, nor would I understand how to provide any thoughts about such a waiver above 35 feet because of the depression of where the existing ground is. And so I wondered, what are you looking for, and sort of visually, how does the height work on this sloping land anyway?
So what I can explain, Linda, is the issue with the need for the height waiver comes from the zoning bylaw and how the zoning bylaw requires height to be calculated. And the height is calculated from the two lowest points of the existing grade before any grading to the ridge of the dwelling. So for this site, if this was existing grade and this was the two lowest points, the house goes up, to the peak at, 30 feet. But because this was a quarry site, your current grade is somewhere down here. So even though the existing grade and where there's going to be some cut and some fill, we're talking cut and fill from current grade, not where the existing grade was. So a 30-foot house could be, 47 feet when you're looking at the current grade. So it has to do with how height is required to be measured.
I understand that, but I don't understand what kind of variance and what sort of language would, or is this just something that will be measured by the building department at?
No, so
at
if
the time?
if existing grade was here and the house is, but the current grade is, 15 feet lower. And in some places they're cutting, in some places they're filling. But where the project ends up, it's still 10 feet lower than where existing grade is. How height gets measured in the bylaw, the house is 40, could be 40 something feet tall, but in reality it's not. It's still only a 30-foot house when the project's done. It's not a variance. They're not requesting a variance under the PRD. It is a waiver, and specifically this was something that the board changed in the PRD to allow this waiver provision for cases where there's significant changes in topography, and in this case the measure that the Board of Appeals has to meet is whether the granting of that waiver is substantially detrimental to the neighborhood.
Mhm.
So
But
that's it.
how do we know that the houses don't end up being 40 feet about, or, if you just say, sure, we give you a waiver, build whatever you want.
No, so the height of the proposed height of the buildings is based off the proposed grading and where those finished grades will end up. And they will be required. Typically, the building commissioner will recommend as a condition of approval that once the foundation is put in and framing is done, that they provide a surveyed plan of the finished grade and the top of the ridge for framing before the house is enclosed.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to be.
No, it's not a simple, it is one of the more complicated sections in the zoning bylaw.
Okay. And in terms of lighting, will there be lighting on the lane?
No, we have not proposed any streetlights on the lane.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let me make sure and before we open it up to public question and comment, I just wanted to ask, you mentioned that these 6 units would be a homeowners association or a condoized in some way. That will not be related to the existing. I assume there's a homeowners association for the portion that's in Sudbury. They will not be linked in any meaningful way, but I'm guessing that these 6 units, it looks like there's a pool is what I'm saying. So like, will they have access to that? How does that?
There's no pool in Sudbury, but there would be a sub-association of the other condominium association, but they're separate accounting for their budgets, separate board.
Okay.
So,
We don't have to get into that. I was curious how that would be, how that would function. Okay. Let me see if you, I should have said this at the outset. If you would like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand function and I will hopefully see you and try to make a call, or someone else, if anybody else sees somebody with a raised hand. Let me know. I'm not seeing one. I'm kind of scrolling through. I am not seeing a, oh, we have Scott Richardson.
Hi, couple questions.
Oh, please introduce yourself.
Hi,
And,
Scott Richardson, 260 Elsinore Street.
Thank you.
I didn't hear during the presentation the actual size of the home, square footage. What's the range of the square footage of the homes?
the duplexes are 2,700 square feet approximately. And the single family homes range from around 4,200 to 4,600 square feet under air.
And does that include the basement?
It does not include the basement, but it does include those options that I was showing the board earlier, as turning the patio into a 3-season room or something like that.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. And then a question about the site itself and construction of the site. Will you need to be bringing in materials to level up the earth?
No, it's the material is, we have enough material on site to take care of our fill needs.
Including dirt for the landscaping?
Yes.
Got it. And then just to follow up on Sue Felshen's questions regarding, or comments regarding the solar on the roof, that was the first thing I thought when I looked at the plans here tonight. I didn't see how solar arrays would really be optimal on some of the designs at all. I would really strongly encourage you to, make sure that the orientation of the roofs work for maximum effect. And if possible, it might be great to use some of that back slope for a solar array. Anything we can do to increase the output and reduce the environmental impact, I think would be great, including, and again, you may have considered this already, I don't know, but minimize the grass that needs to be cut via the riding mower, which is going to be in the garage, right? I mean,
Right.
If we can get more native and less grass, I think that would actually probably, speaking as someone who hates mowing his lawn. Last comment is, in terms of the 3-car garages, will the Sudbury development have a van? I mean, there's an awful lot of people down there. I would think that association or that condo might have a van running to the train station, in which case it might not be necessary to have 3-car garages.
The Sudbury project does have a transportation management plan, which includes a van. So to answer your question, yes, that Sudbury it does have one.
Yeah, the more that we can leverage of the Sudbury development would be, great.
I mean, I can look at that, Scott, and I can't. They're separate from that standpoint, but I can look at that, Scott.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. Let me see if I'm not seeing anybody else. Last opportunity. All right. So I believe we are continuing this to the August 23rd meeting. Is that right?
Yes, at 7 p.m.
All right. We will continue this meeting to August 23rd, 7 p.m. We don't need to take a vote for that, do we?
No, it's just
Okay.
a recommendation.
All right. All right. Thank you very much, Chris, Matt, everybody.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time tonight, and we'll see you in another month.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right. Let me bring back up the agenda. All right. Now on to administrative business. The first thing I have on here is for our goals and projects for 22-23.
If you
Elizabeth, do you want to?
I can bring up the letter.
Yep. I'll apologize. I'm also looking at another screen that has it up over here. I'm not looking away from the camera.
So can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay. So I don't know if you want to just go through it and discuss and ask questions or whether had.
Yeah, I think that would be good. Let's just run down the list again.
Okay, so the first part is just an update on your goals and projects from last year. Unless anybody had any edits or additions or changes. I can just keep going.
Well, I was thinking Sue usually jumps in for some sort of edit. I was a little surprised. Did we pass that hurdle? Did we get there?
Oh, I had a question. Sorry. And that
Okay.
has to do with number 3, the Crosstown Connect.
Yep.
And I wondered, now that we have this pilot trolley shuttle, should we mention that and talk about that? Will the planning board at all be involved in any study or any review or any discussion of that, or that's
No,
off our plate?
that is
Okay,
that is off your plate.
okay.
As part of town meeting's budget, this past town meeting, the planning division after 4 years was finally successful in getting at least funding for half of time for a new transportation planner. And I believe the town manager is securing funds from other sources to make it a full-time position. I believe the personnel board has approved the new job description, and so we will have somebody on board who will be working with the economic vitality and tourism manager, not only on the Concord trolley, but also currently our communications director has been doing a lot of the transportation work, was successful in getting funding put into the transportation bond bill that recently passed. The town of Concord, Lexington, and Lincoln has been working with the Minuteman National Park on and worked with the Volpe Center on doing a 3-town shuttle feasibility study, and have come up with a 3-town shuttle service that includes the national park. And the discussions up to this point with the 3 communities in the national park was to submit a grant for the Federal Lands Access Program, the FLAP grant, which we are still going to do because even though Aaron Stevens, our public information officer, was successful, got 3 years of funding at approximately $2.6 million in the transportation bond bill. If anybody knows how funds actually go from the transportation bond bill to actually being given to communities, if you can let me know, that'd be helpful. So we are still applying for the FLAP grant, which we think has a high level of potential for success, not only because it involves 3 communities and the Minuteman National Park, which for its size and the number of visitors gets, it's actually, highly used, but also that funding gets us into the 2025 anniversary for the shot heard around the world. And they've currently, pre-COVID, the Minuteman National Park gets over 1 million visitors a year. They expect that to go up by at least 250,000 people. 250,000 people for 2025. So those are all things that are now just happening and will continue to happen, and not something that the planning board has to be trying to shove from behind anymore. It's actually moving.
But in your comments, you say that there's no momentum from any of the communities to enter into a new agreement, and I thought
Not
maybe,
for Crosstown Connect, no.
okay, but
So if you want, I mean, I can add in this that, Concord is now moving in a different direction on its own.
yeah, that would be, I
okay.
think that might, because otherwise it looks as if, I mean, there obviously is a lot of momentum. It just doesn't involve the planning board.
Correct.
So I don't know how to say that, but
Yeah, I do. Basically
Oh,
take what
good.
I told you and make it sound more eloquent.
great. Thank you.
Well, Nathan, you have embarrassed me into finding a typographical error under item
It
5.
wasn't, it wasn't meant as a challenge, but
Well, I took it as a challenge. Actually, I didn't, but somehow it just leaped out and smacked me across the face.
all right, what do you
Table,
get?
yeah,
But I'm letting Elizabeth type in her eloquent way.
Okay. Do you want to just keep running through this and then when I get to the typo, you can let me know?
Sure.
Okay. And so yearly, so hopefully it's usually somewhere around September. The board goes through the Envision Concord action items and that chart that all other boards and committees strive to meet the planning board's high standard that you set. And so that is something that you do every year, and that's reflected further in the memo. And then you have the FAR bylaw discussion. And the subdivision rules and regs.
that's where there was a typo, correct?
Oh,
On
Yeah,
number 5?
the very last word of item 5 should be tabled past tense.
There you go.
And I actually, this is sort of a preview. I am embarrassed to say I wasn't paying sufficient attention before I was a member of the board to what was going on with the FAR. The board didn't reach a consensus. The discussion was tabled, but we now have new membership and under our goals for next year. So not under what we're currently discussing. I wonder if we should reconsider the question of an FAR, but let's leave that for when we're actually discussing this year's goals.
And then 6, 7, 8, and these are things that are continuing to being worked on. The parking and zoning requirements updates just did not happen, and then we continued to monitor what the state's doing with the MBTA community zoning requirements. So now the important part. So currently the board is discussing amendments to the combined business residence. The board had also previously talked about the amending to remove the fast food restaurant requirement. So that will be something that the board will see in the next month as I work with the health division and putting together the bylaw amendment itself. To do that it's not difficult. The words just in the prohibition section, the words just get deleted. But it's providing the planning board with all of the information on why town staff feels that amendment is appropriate and the impacts it's having on small businesses. And so that's something that the board will see from town staff. And in my notes, in speaking with, there's one housekeeping goal, and it has to do, it's in the definition of affordable housing in the zoning bylaw. It references the affordable subsidized, the affordable housing inventory. And that should be, as far as the state requirements, it should be the subsidized housing inventory, not affordable. So that's just a housekeeping item. Everybody's familiar with the 40B requirements. And if we're over or under our 10% on the state's subsidized housing inventory. So that's just a correction in the terminology. So that's all I have currently. And then if the board wants to, as Sue mentioned, incorporate a new section to revisit the floor area ratio bylaw, that can be added as an a potential bylaw amendment or additional discussion. I think where the board left off last time with all the research and that Kate McEnany was doing, and Andrew, I believe Andrew was assisting with that. What I remember the board leaving off was actually not trying to amend the current format of the floor area ratio bylaw, but coming up with a different sliding type scale based on square footage and not necessarily just based on a zoning district. So if that's something that the board wants to take up again.
I mean, is there an interest? Sue, I know you, like you said, you weren't around for those original conversations, but for those that were on top of the other things that are already on that list, is that something that there's an interest in doing, bringing that back up and doing further investigation on that?
Well, I personally don't think our FAR has been doing enough for the town. I'm actually doing mathematical calculations is not something that excites me, but I would be interested in looking at what we might do to tweak the FAR to try to find some better balance between protecting the interests of the town as a whole and protecting the interests of individual property owners.
I agree. I mean, I don't know if that, that adjusting the FAR is the answer or what it is, but it just strikes me that, while we have done a lot to improve the likelihood of more affordability, it's still clearly not enough. It still just feels like it's like a topic that's never gonna, it's never gonna go away. It's not, doesn't seem like there's enough that we can do at this point in time. Like, it's just so dire out there, just to be depressed about it, honestly.
Well, we could get rid of single family zoning entirely, but I don't think that that is something that the town would vote in favor of. So that leaves us looking at other alternatives.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago, there had been some brainstorming around like types of overlay districts or whatever. There are different mechanisms to still, I think, explore related to this topic. So I just hate for us to not have anything on our agenda this year about it.
If the board as a whole doesn't support it, then so be it. I just thought it was worth bringing up.
I mean, thinking about, board time, staff time, anything like that, there's 7 items listed on there currently. Is there any 1 or 2 particular items that, we have priority lists on them, but that we would be willing to sacrifice to put more focus on FAR?
You're saying we have 7 for town meeting this year already, or 7 in this total list here?
The goals, under the goals and project.
Yeah, okay. And some are not for town meeting. Oh.
Correct.
Yep.
What were number 6 and 7? Could you scroll
Yep.
down to
Um,
remind me? I should be
so-
looking at this
yeah.
document in the background.
No, that's okay. So 2 is just your annual review of your action items from the Envision Concord plan. 3 is the working with a consultant to update the subdivision rules and regulations. 7 is, God willing, I am given time to finish revising updating the draft rules and regs that the board had started on. 5 is the tree preservation bylaw rules and regulations updates, which I'm continuing to work with the natural resources land manager on developing updates to those rules and regs, which I should say there are a couple of items that he has identified in the rules and regs that many of the requirements in the rules and regulations are mirrored in the bylaw. So they would require a town meeting warrant to update the actual tree preservation bylaw, but that's not a zoning bylaw, it's a general bylaw. But those corresponding updates to the actual bylaw itself aren't significant as far as to prepare those updates. So the parking zoning requirements, the select board and the town manager have begun discussions on looking at a more holistic conversation about just parking in general. So I don't think that the planning board can or should go and just proceed with just looking at the parking requirements in the zoning if the select board and the town manager are going to have a more holistic conversation about, parking meters and public parking. And because all of that has an impact on parking and just uses in all the different business districts. And so I think this is just going to have to play out and then have the board figure out how they are involved in that conversation. So I don't know where that is currently with the select board and the town manager's office, but something that I will follow for the board.
Are you thinking that is something that would take place this year, though? I'm just saying because I know parking obviously is something that comes up often, and we talked about reviewing.
I do think it is going to come up within the year. Yes.
Okay, so there might be time toward the end of this planning year that we're talking about to address that. Okay.
But I will contact the town manager to see where that discussion is in the pipeline.
Item 7 seems like something that on the one hand takes none of our time until the state acts, but if the state actually does something, could take up suddenly a lot of our time. Potentially something where we could look at, we could put FAR on our list possibly, but then if the state actually moves forward on the MBTA community requirement, then we need to do some work and we could drop FAR like a hot potato at that point. I'm just advancing that as a possibility.
Yeah, and until the state comes out with the final, guidelines and what it is those actual requirements are going to be. Yeah, I can't even begin to guess. But it's something that communities will have not 6 or 8 or 9 months to comply with it. Communities will have, they will have to provide communities years, if not years, to comply, just because of the study and what will have to go into meeting the requirements will be a significant challenge for many communities. So it's not something that the board has to even think about for annual town meeting for next year. It's not feasible.
Thank goodness. While I'm loading us down with too much work, I want to bring up the question of, this is something that's been in the back of my head since I was on the West Concord Task Force a million years ago. Would we like to revisit the zoning in the West Concord business district? The village district has some very village-centric, pedestrian-friendly zoning with parking in the back and buildings toward the front of the property and all these nice things, but the business district doesn't. And this primarily affects the, what is its official name? The White Hen Pantry Strip Mall, which doesn't have a White Hen Pantry in it these last many years. If it were to be rebuilt under current zoning, that would be very sad. And just like if the Crosby's property and adjacent properties were to be rebuilt under current zoning, that would be very sad. It seems to me it's the same sort of thing where we should lump them together to a large degree. So I'm just throwing that out there. And I know we haven't decided what to do about revisiting last year's plan for the Thorough Depot area. But if we decide to consider doing anything about that, one thing we might possibly do would be to broaden that discussion to more similar districts, especially what I just said.
I agree with that. I think, I know more about West Concord than the other side, but yeah, I would think we would want to do something similar in West Concord.
And I confess I haven't checked lately to see how many other business district areas there are where the question would be applicable. Not much, I would guess.
So Elizabeth, are we, I know subdivision especially gets just kind of pushed because it's time consuming and not, driven by town meeting, but I see it's on here again. Is that something that like a similar third party, like for site plan, who had helped us, like that, where that's even possible this year, or what do you think about that for this year?
Not this calendar year. So for an RFP at that level, under state procurement requirements, there's certain requirements that it has to go out in the central register and get requests for qualifications and requests for proposals. And so that right there itself is probably like a 2-month process. So as the board moves closer in the next few months to having final draft rules and regs for site plan review, when you get ready to actually kind of start to have the public discussion and public hearing on those rules, and that's when I would move forward with the RFQ RFP process for the subdivision. And likely that's going to be a 6-month process, but that's going to be at a much higher level than the assistance that MAPC provided. This will actually be a consultant who will that will be preparing all of this, meeting with the board, meeting with stakeholders, having public forums, and checking in with the planning board. So it'll be a much more involved consultant process.
And is that because that's just the way subdivision rules, everybody has to follow the same process, or I just not familiar
No,
with.
it's the technical side of updating the subdivision rules and regs and the the actual construction standards. And that is beyond my technical capability. So
Mhm.
that's why actually hiring a consultant to assist with that side of it is required.
And I guess this is somewhat coming back into my memory from us talking about it a while back, but and that's because we want to update those because there's something that is like a requirement for updating like the technical side, or
No, it's just they haven't been updated since 2007.
got it.
There's no LID requirements in our subdivision rules and regs. There's
Oh yeah,
no
I'm
there's
very familiar.
yeah there's
Yeah, I had a vague memory of you saying a while back that like there was some sort of necessary like regulatory requirement lingering out there for like something in the subdivision rules and regs that needed to be updated, but maybe I'm confusing that with something else in like floodplain conservancy district or whatever.
yes,
I just-
floodplain conservancy district is lingering out there.
Okay.
FEMA went through and updated some of the maps around the Elmbrook, Virginia Road area. And the draft maps that we looked at had a whole area that was in the floodplain that miraculously was missing. And I think a layer wasn't turned on or turned off. But it seems that technical oversight has caused a lot of commotion within FEMA, and we still do not have those updated maps. Once we get those maps, that will require another zoning bylaw amendment to adopt those new FEMA maps so that we retain our status in the I'm getting my acronyms
Something
mixed
important.
up. In
The thing that we want to retain our status in.
the national flood insurance
Oh yeah,
program.
program.
Okay, there you go. So yes, that is a requirement.
So just as far as like the list is concerned, and to the question of like, well, what is our bandwidth for? If there's any, can we add anything? Like, I guess just so everybody and Sue, you especially as the new one, are concerned. Like, it sounds like 3 is pretty far out there, and once it does kick off, we won't be super heavily involved for a while.
No, no, not. I mean, I estimate it's it's going to be medium amount of time. It's
But
I
it's at least like
imagine
6 to 8 months out.
yeah, well, yeah, 5 months, 5 months out.
Elizabeth, I have a question under item 1 regarding fast food. Did you say that discussions are including the health department?
Yes.
Because I was wondering, among the detriments of fast food restaurants are the enormous amount that they add to the waste stream. And I have read about how there are a variety of places around the country, not a whole lot, that have instituted reusable food container systems. It generally involves a private company that provides containers. A fee is charged, you get your fee back when you turn your container in, and then the private company takes care of washing them. And I don't know if we could interest any company in setting something like that up in a small town like Concord or as an area system, but
So
we
I
would
wanna-
probably need some kind of buy-in from the health department to even allow it. So I
want to be really careful
Mhm.
about the conversation when we deal with zoning and we're talking about uses and anything that has to do with the health code. And I want to make sure that the board does not enter any conversations when it talks about the health code and when you're talking about a zoning bylaw amendment. And fast food is unfortunately in the zoning bylaw when that, everybody was worried about McDonald's or Dunkin's or, Starbucks coming in and fast food. And it really is an unfortunate use of the term, because you're talking about any sandwich shop that wants to do takeout, and all they want to do is a sub shop with takeout. Well, because the zoning says you can't have a fast food use, you can't have just a takeout restaurant. So you have to have a minimum of 12 seats, and you have to be classified as a restaurant. The minute you have seats, and this is the reason the health division is involved, it kicks in health code requirements and Title V requirements, or sewer improvement fee requirements. It kicks in plumbing code requirements. It kicks in the requirement for a handicap accessible bathroom. It kicks in it kicks in significant number of things for just the little guy that wants a sub shop.
Right, and I can see
that is the discussion of zoning.
I also don't want us to have that entire discussion right now. I
right.
want us just
The
to be
only
able to
reason I
say,
brought it up, right? The only reason I brought it up at all tonight is that if Elizabeth is in discussion with the health department, I would hope that they would be thinking about whether they would even allow such a thing, irrespective of whether it's fast food or not. I mean, I know I, as a citizen, would get a lot more food from restaurants if it didn't all come in plastic, which I know doesn't really get recycled, no matter what I do with it. But I understand that that's not for the board to discuss. I just thought I would fling that out there because I don't know how else to get it. Well, I could write them myself, I guess.
So I don't know how it would work with a restaurant. I believe Deborah's next door is implementing something similar to that for their bulk goods.
Then it should spread to everybody. That would be great. But it could also get a lot more buy-in from the populace to change from the voting citizens of the town at town meeting to rescind our fast food regulations if they could be confident that we wouldn't trip over plastic garbage all down the streets.
Well, it's whether you have a fast food restaurant come into town is now that the 3 main commercial districts have a formula business limitation. And again, as I said, the minute you have 12 seats and you are a restaurant, you can document your restaurant indoor seating, and you are a restaurant, and you're 51% of your business is people coming in and sitting down and eating. You can have takeout. So it's not going to prohibit McDonald's from coming into Concord.
Well, that's never been prohibited as under the formula business. Even if we were at the formula business cap, they would just have to paint their golden arches pink and do a few other things, and they'd be allowed. But also, don't we currently prohibit ghost kitchens? I thought we were also. Okay, I'm getting too much into the weeds. Let's not talk about this now, because this is just about what should be in our goals.
I think that, it's a good conversation for when we actually discuss that potential amendment.
Yep.
Yeah.
So based on the fact that for the subdivision, number 3, that might not be something that even begins being worked on until 6 months at the earliest. I mean, do we think there's capacity or interest to add the FAR discussion back into there? I didn't seem to get, there's a couple people that seemed interested, but I wasn't getting an overwhelming sense that people wanted to go back to that.
I think we could maybe do it if we had a sense of a more modest goal. I think the goal when we I joined after the goal had been set and jumped into
Yep.
the discussion midstream. And the reason we pulled the plug on it, I believe, was in part because we were playing with numbers and trying to figure out what the FAR was going to do when we hadn't had a more fundamental discussion of where we wanted it to go. We just kind of jumped into making changes because there was a lot of discussion, it was like the fourth or fifth discussion of it. And we were still talking about what the goal of modifying the FAR was. It mansionization? Was it carbon reduction? Was it, was it all of the above? And because we were still discussing that sort of fundamental level, it felt like we were running in circles. And so maybe if we staged it more like as a planning, what do we hope to get out of the FAR, and then discuss ways it can be done as opposed to the way we did it before, it might be better. It's just a thought. And I don't know if that's even helpful, but.
Elizabeth, can we put, before we officially put it on the list, can we put some time in one of the more, sooner upcoming meetings, just to set aside time to discuss that sort of at length rather than right now in this moment? Because I want to be able to go back and look at some of the things that we did and sort of have that, top of mind. Which I just don't have that right now. I mean, I remember some of our conversations about it, but.
So it comes down to, Sue, I know you replied to the email, but do you know offhand, are you available for the August meeting for the 9th and the 23rd?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I don't know about Mark. So that puts Nathan not at the 9th and Andrew not, and Linda and Andrew not at the 23rd. So I mean, I can put it for your first meeting in September.
I think that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. So what usually towards the end of July is when you send in this memo. So what I to the select board, what I can do is just add this add this as an item, but that
Big asterisk.
well
Well, if we put the word possibly in it, possibly consider an update to the FAR, then we're not committing ourselves to do it. Consider
Well,
whether to consider whether.
so I think so I think if I'm understanding Nathan and Andrew, it's well, it's just to have a general discussion about the effectiveness and goals of amending the FAR. And
I think part of it is, and I'm just speaking for myself, is just to go back and have an opportunity to look at where we left off previously, just so, because what I don't want to do is bring it back and then we just go, do the same exercise all over again, end up at the exact same spot. And if, myself, Andrew, Haley, I know you were around at that time, if we can go back and just look at that, and that way we can, when we have the discussion about it, and Sue and hopefully Mark are available for that meeting, then, could sort of reintroduce it to ourselves and to them, and just see, do we want to dig further or just leave it for now?
did you want, and what did you want to add, Andrew? Is that, am I close?
Yeah, I think not committing to move forward and not, just kind of taking that step back and determining what our goal is with it is an important step. And then we can level set with it.
Okay,
And,
I will.
It's what the goal and whether it's an appropriate tool is kind of the two pieces of that.
If the FAR is an appropriate tool.
To address mansionization?
Well, against mansionization, yeah, it can be, but it didn't. I'm recalling a lot of discussions that ended up bogging us down because
Or whether there's another mechanism.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say this as determine whether modifying the FAR is an appropriate way to address mansionization, because I think the FAR is an appropriate tool. The question is, have we taken it as far as it can go?
Mm-hmm.
Or
well, I will, Sue, I will send you all the previous stuff. And you can.
I can go read that too, yes.
You can get bogged down in the numbers.
And I think it was getting bogged down in those numbers where Haley, I think it was the last conversation you had with Kate, was actually looking at, abandoning the current form of the FAR in the zoning bylaw and looking at a different form of FAR based on a square footage and not just a calculation for each of the zone districts. It was more, I think the board was going toward, had a conversation about the possibility of a sliding scale FAR that would be not in the table of uses based on zone district, but in 6.2.12 based on existing lot square footage.
Yep, that's what I remember we left
And
off.
I think that's why we had to take a step back, because it was totally different than
It
wasn't the wrong
totally
way, it was
different.
just such a fundamental change.
So that sentence that I just said, I will try and add to this paragraph.
What, the part about maybe moving it from the table of uses to section 6.2.12?
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
I don't know how like detailed this write-up needs to be or whatever, but I don't know if we, if what I'm hearing is like that we should exactly pick up where we left off, right? I think it's more like more of a fundamental discussion about, do we want to do anything with modifying FAR, regardless of whatever rabbit hole we went down before?
Yeah. Okay. So just it's just a fundamental discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I will make this sound. I can't spell anymore.
Mm.
Fundamental,
It contains funda, you had it right. It
Fundamental.
contains mental, and we're all feeling kind of mental right now.
Okay, so I don't think that discussion is, requires, I think it's, low time for both the board and myself. And I would say it's probably a medium priority. I wouldn't place it at a high or a low, but if the board agrees.
Works for me.
All right, we're getting close to 9:30, so I want to, and we've talked a little bit about town meeting bylaw amendments, potential bylaw amendments for this upcoming town meeting. And I want to just start off with the list that we see on there under number 1. Oh,
Sorry.
So some form potentially of the Thoreau Depot Business District Amendment. We were just discussing the adjusting the fast food wording and the combined business residence one, which I think you included something for that in our package for this week, right? So I think an appropriate place to start is that list a, adequate list? Is that what people want to see, want to do? And then we can take those and we can break them up and we can discuss them at length, at another meeting, but are there things people want to see added, want to see taken off? I'll hear your arguments either way.
So the idea with the combined business residence piece, that's like what I think, and I haven't reviewed what you sent, Elizabeth, but is the idea there is like we're trying to address at least something related to Thoreau Depot, but it's certainly not, it's like whatever, like scaled back from what failed last time. Is that what that is?
So the last conversation the board had, and I don't think you were at the meeting,
Oh, sure.
Haley, was the discussions that were happening, during the whole Thoreau Depot Business District. There was definite genuine support for, mixed use development. So the board discussed taking those elements from the Thoreau Depot business and just amending the current combined business residence section. There was definite strong support for the affordable housing proposal and incorporating, the different levels and the requirements for, things being included on the SHI and the ability to fractional units and having in lieu payment for fractional units. So it was just taking some of those elements and looking at just the combined business residence to at least, I guess, foster combined business residence mixed use developments.
Okay.
Well, have we completely taken off the table the notion of bringing the original article back again in essentially its entirety? I'm not sure that that would necessarily be the right way to move forward, but depending on discussions with other boards or committees around town, I guess I'd kind of like to leave it open as a possibility, even if it is not what we would end up doing.
So I think these two, the draft that Elizabeth sent around, in my mind, the components that had been in the last year's Thoreau Depot Business District bylaw or warrant article, you wouldn't carry both because you're covering some in what Elizabeth sent around. So you could extract that out of a potential Thoreau Depot Business District warrant article for this coming town meeting. And so you'd have sort of a basic structure that exists for anywhere where you could have combined business residence. But then there would be other components that would potentially be associated, distinctly to Thoreau Depot as a separate warrant article.
Right.
I think
but
about that in the
that's
right,
not on our list.
framework.
So I think Sue's question is whether the board has had an initial discussion about just taking the warrant article that failed last year and putting it forth again for town meeting next year.
Or alternatively, doing kind of what, like Nathan said, splitting it into two pieces, but currently only one of those two pieces is on our list of goals, and the other piece is not on our list of goals. And I'd hate to see us close off that concept already.
They're both on there.
They are? Wait.
Under number one, there's both the Thoreau Depot Business District, and then there's also the combined.
Oh, you're right. I misread it and I apologize. I just brain fart. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, so I mean, I think my original, I think saying opposition is a little harsh, but my original hesitation against pulling it out and doing separately was that, the concern of having a space redeveloped or incentivizing the redevelopment to have combined business residents, which I think we do want, but then not, so again, thinking particularly for the Thoreau Depot, but then not having the other elements in place to avoid having a redevelopment that gets some of what we want in terms of the actual affordable housing or actually having combined business residents, but still having parking lot, massive parking lot in the front, for example, or something like that. There's the usability or the aesthetic aspects that then are left out. And I think a lot of people care about that pretty deeply.
Well, that's a strong point, but since they're both since the entire constellation of possibilities is on the list, which I unaccountably forgot about, it seems like we can discuss that when it comes time to discuss it.
Which will be the next few meetings if the board.
Yes.
moves forward, So
Yay!
So back to my original question, are there any topics that are on there that you think are, or rather, do you think there are any topics that are missing that you would like to see to discuss as potential items for town meeting, or anything on there that you prefer not to have on there?
Well, I don't think it matters. I'm chugging my way through the zoning bylaw, and I will have some housekeeping article changes to suggest, but this is not, I don't think it's worthy of including as a goal.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, site plan, getting the site plan rules and regs done is important, and that'll still take more time. And then same with subdivision. I think those are two that are pretty critical to get done this, not calendar year, but this next year.
All right. Okay, so I think that sufficiently covers. I just closed our agenda, which I did not mean to do. I think
so
that's-
if I can
Yes.
ask, I'll fix this item to make it coherent, and then if the board wants to have the chair review the final memo before it gets sent to the select board, that would be great.
I'm okay with that. If everybody's okay with the list as it is.
Great.
All right. All right, let's review the meeting minutes of April 5th and June 14th. Did we get June 14th?
You did not get June
Yeah.
14th.
Okay, so only April 5th. Did anybody have any corrections? I am definitely not looking at you, Sue. I'm not looking at you.
I sent something to Elizabeth, but that probably already got incorporated into the draft minutes.
All right.
It has.
Then there we are.
All right, if there are no other additions or corrections, I am willing to take a motion to accept.
Sure, I move that we approve the minutes of April 5th, 2022,
As written.
as written. Thank you.
I'll second that.
All right, having a second, let's take a vote. Sue,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
Haley,
Yes.
Linda,
Yes.
and I'm also a yes. So yay for unanimous consent. Any liaison or town planner? I cannot talk. Town planner updates. Linda, I see your hand there.
Yes, sorry, I don't mean to prolong the meeting, but there has been a lot going on in the affordable housing area. And I think that the select board did review yesterday what many constituents in the affordable housing arena have been discussing, and that is the SHI. And I think that because of changes in the financing environment, the affordable housing unit, Christopher Heights Junction Village, it is looking potentially for additional funding. And some of that funding would have to come in kind or from the town. The select board didn't take a vote on it, but I think the sentiment was negative last night. And without that moving forward, it looks like it would be very much a stretch for us to meet the goal of 10% with the current assumptions of what the census data will bring forth come March or April or whenever that is due. So I think as a planning board, we probably need to be cognizant of the fact that we may at some point be seeing 40B applications. And unfortunately, maybe, so it would have been nice to have the Thorough Business Depot somewhat protected from that. And I don't know if there are other districts that we need to be thinking about as well, but we might want to consider, and I don't know if we should put that on our goals of things to think about in terms of what would the board do differently if we are looking in the face of potential 40B applications. Elizabeth.
Yeah,
maybe you have other
sadly,
thoughts.
there's nothing the board could do at this point.
So,
Yeah, if Christopher Heights does not pull a building permit, I do not think we'll be above 10% when the new census numbers comes out. And yeah. So it will be a very challenging time.
For 40B, what's the time frame after there's a recognition of not meeting the threshold for you to potentially meet the threshold? Or is it's just at the moment it's recognized, that's it?
The moment you're under, you're under. And the town is going to gain a few units. There's two, there's two at Mill Run Commons, there's Habitat's 2 units, but the safe harbors, I don't remember what the actual number for safe harbors is, but it's like 20 something units. It's not half a dozen. So I don't think we would make the safe harbor threshold either.
Plus,
Okay.
we keep adding to our denominator with new units, new unaffordable units being built around town.
right, like what we listened to today, on Fitchburg.
For
Yes.
example.
6 more properties.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to get into discussing.
No, not
Particular thing,
specific, but each
That wasn't the
each
only
house.
one I was thinking of.
Yeah. Although I suspect that's the reason Sudbury set the limit at 6 units for Concord, but anyway. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Any other liaison reports?
West Concord Advisory meeting got canceled for lack of quorum, so nothing there.
And
But I
anything-
think there were 2 new members appointed last night at the select board meeting, so they now
Wonderful,
have a quorum.
wonderful.
CPC meets next week. That's-
Elizabeth, any news on your end? How are your new people coming along? Still good? Still coming?
They're still showing up every day, so that's awesome. No, they're
That's a low bar, Elizabeth.
well, it's a very challenging office. And the amount that goes through the planning division, but we are also temporarily located upstairs because they are dividing my office and Marcia's office to create a 3rd office for the new transportation planner. So I'm upstairs in the building commissioner's office, who this Friday will be his last day as he comes back from 5 weeks of vacation and then goes into retirement. And then everybody else is in the conference room at the end of the hall on the 2nd floor. And so it's been pretty chaotic, but
I was gonna say, I figured somebody had to be in a conference room. There's not much room left in that building.
yeah, no, I think this will be the last space that we can squeeze out of that building. So,
Yeah.
so on the agenda is the discussion, the draft changes to the combined business residence. I don't know if the board wants to table that till the next meeting.
Yeah, I think so. Do we have, do you know, in the pipeline, do we have any more hearings coming up? Anything that's going to take up a decent amount of more time?
Yes.
Okay.
So the application for the Concord Middle School,
Yep.
that will be submitted likely next week, August 1st, Monday.
No, nobody's interested in that.
Especially
So
the planning board?
well, so I'm not, I believe it may come to the planning board for a recommendation because they are requesting a parking waiver. And it is in the groundwater conservancy district, and they're going slightly over 15% of the impervious coverage as well. And so I have to look, I believe the planning board is required to make a recommendation to the Board of Appeals, but it would be for those 2 items. It does not require site plan review as a municipal use. So it'll be a very focused discussion. But I mean, the Concord Middle School Building Committee has done such an amazing job as far as the outreach. So there really shouldn't be a lot of questions about the project itself, but it's going through just going through that permitting process. So the board won't see that till your first meeting in September.
Okay.
And then I believe Concord Academy will be moving forward with a new performing arts building. So, but again, you won't be seeing that till September at the earliest. But
So
no,
we can relax this summer with some nice, easygoing discussions of zoning bylaw.
zoning bylaw amendments, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's, if we can put that the combined business residence one onto, I won't be here, but onto the 9th, I would,
Okay.
I'd be happy if everybody can continue on that discussion for that one.
Okay.
All right. That's all the administrative business. Is there anybody out there who's still watching and listening, who has any general public comments.
Yeah, hi, this is Carol Savoy. I have a public comment. I'm at 61 Belknap Street.
Yep.
I was wondering, have you thought about addressing design guidelines as a 2022, 2023 goal or objective as part of that list?
So I think are you speaking in general town-wide or for?
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, originally, I think you were looking at design guidelines as part of Thoreau Depot, but you know, if you're re-looking at zoning and if you're looking at that, some of the combined business town-wide, I think part of that should be design guidelines, or you should maybe start talking about that as part of looking at the rezoning.
Okay. I think we can bring that up as part of our one of our discussions in one of the upcoming meetings.
I think it technically already falls under item 1, but having it be more explicit, bringing it up is for consideration seems a fair idea.
Yeah, I think you guys were addressing it separately last year. You were saying, let's get the zoning done, then we'll deal with the design guidelines. But I think there should be design guidelines in place, you know, just in general, right? And then the zoning maybe separately. So it'd be 2 topics versus 1.
Yeah, I think that's something we can look into discussing as a broader topic for the town.
Great, thank you, Nathan.
Thank you, Carol. All right, Stephen Bader, I see hand up and video on and ready.
Thank you, Chair. Stephen Bader, 7 River Street. I wanted to bring your attention that the MBTA communities definitions, rules, and regulations are still under development. However, they are looking like they will intersect with some of the town's other goals, in particular H 5060, which is on its way to the governor to sign, which is the new environmental clean energy and everything else requirement, has tucked into it in page 87 out of 96 pages, language that says that DHCD should do a trial including 10 towns throughout the Commonwealth that have requested home rule petitions to ban fossil fuels, to let them go further along the process. However, in order to get into that pool of 10 demonstration project, you need to either have met your 10% SHI affordability or your MBTA community set aside. And right now Concord, as of March, will qualify for neither of those. And so I'm not disagreeing with Elizabeth's assessment that it'll take a while to get all the MBTA community details worked out, but it will have an impact on other town goals, including environmental goals. And I just thought you should be aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, I'm not seeing any other raised hands. So with that, I believe we can adjourn today's meeting on July 26th, 2022.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.